Hi, this is Gayle from BERNINA of Naperville, and welcome to our brand new January Kimberbell Society, where we are making something that is a little bit more spring oriented instead of winter. Well, for me, I got to start on spring in January or else it never gets done, right? So just a little reminder and some housekeeping. We do the Kimberbell Dealer Digital Exclusives here at BERNINA of Naperville, which we call Kimberbell Society. And with us, there is no upfront buy all of the designs for the whole year. You can just pay as you go here, and everything is already on our website. It's already uploaded, and you can purchase your Kimberbell stuff way into 2024. So that's good news for you. And we also do it a couple different ways. You can purchase just the kit. You can purchase the kit with the designs, and we kind of do that so that you you just need the designs once, but you might want to make several of the things. So, that's pretty exciting, right? And we really hope that you enjoy it this year. Now, there is a freebie on our website. You can get the little What's the Buzz keychain, and you can even pre-order your embellishment kits. Those should be arriving at the store any day now. And honestly, by the time you watch this video, you probably will already have it. Fingers crossed, right? So for this project and our spring pillow, we're going to use a Bernina L890 serger. I know, isn't that exciting? As well as, of course, our embroidery machine. I'm also going to show you a little way that you can do this with your sewing machine, because really what we're using the serger to do is save our edges. But the main event that we're using our serger for is to do that gathering around this cute little shirred pillow. So what am I talking about? Let's dig in and find out. Okay, to get started, what we're going to do is take you through some simple things about how we deliver our Kimberbell Society projects every month. So this Hello Spring Round Pillow is the first in this year's series. So we put our video up the first Wednesday of the month on our YouTube channel, and that is youtube.com/BERNINA of Naperville. We also provide a link to this presentation that I'm taking you through via our website under the Kimberbell Society page where you signed up for this to begin with. We also provide it in the description of the actual YouTube video itself. We always give you the supplies of what your kit contains and some other things that you might need to complete your project. So this month we are providing you with a fat quarter of white grid for the embroidery and a third of a yard of periwinkle for the pillow trim. That's the shearing or the gathered part of the pillow and the backing. You get a 14-inch zipper and the round pillow form. Now, there's also, if you have not signed up yet when the video premieres and you've watched the video and now you kind of want to do all this stuff, we also have a link to buy the items on that page of our website that you can see right there. And there's a drop-down menu, and you can not only purchase all of the stuff for January, February, March, April, May, all through June, but you can either pick the kit only or the kit and the design. Just be sure of that, because sometimes you might get the design and you want to make several pillows, so we do it that way. Then we do have some other supplies that we're using this month. There are some hoop sizes that are appropriate if you're using a Bernina. This particular project can be done with the Bernina Jumbo hoop, the Bernina Maxi hoop, or the Bernina Medium Square Clamp hoop. Now that's if you're doing the designs that are meant for an 8 by 12 inch. Now you can use smaller hoops if you're doing the smaller pillow, but we're doing the larger pillow. I've also listed out the thread colors that you're going to need for this project, and they're right there highlighted and everything. And we're going to be using Aurifil thread to sew our pillow together. That's going to be in the top and bottom when we do our gathering, when we do our stitching and things like that. And I'll talk about it as we get to those portions of the video. You might want water-soluble thread in your bobbin. That's per the Kimberbell instructions, but we just used a contrasting bobbin of just whatever thread. It doesn't matter. And then finally, you're going to need to add some light mesh tearaway and fusible backing. Now, those of you that did our program last year know that we supplied the stabilizers in your kit, but it just got to be a little too hectic because we didn't always know what to put in there, blah, blah, blah. So for that reason, we have stabilizer for the year 2024. We've listed all of the things that Kimberbell is using, and you can buy a bundle of this stabilizer, and we have it on special. And once again, right there, you can go and click right on that buy now button, and that'll take you to the stabilizer bundle. And once again, we feel pretty strongly that this should get you through the entire year. Of course, if you run out or if you end up using these stabilizers, because you're getting full rolls of the stabilizer, if you run out during the course of the year and you need more, well, all you have to do is just visit us in person, call us on the phone, check out our website, and you can purchase these items online or in person, of course. Then how do you get your Kimberbell designs? Now, normally you buy something from a store and it's a one-stop shop and you just get everything right then and there. But Kimberbell, what we do is whatever email address you use to sign up for your Kimberbell Society through BERNINA of Naperville, we are going to provide Kimberbell with that email address, and then hopefully you're using the same email with us that you do with Kimberbell, because in that way that synergy happens and Kimberbell will place their designs right in your Kimberbell account. If you want to know a little bit more about how to do this, we have a link in this handout that will take you right to the video where you can watch exactly how to do this on our YouTube channel. So don't forget to check that out if you're a little bit confused. And then finally, we just get into some of the cutting that Kimberbell wants you to do for everything and talking about just getting started and all of that stuff. So speaking of getting started, let's talk about what we're going to do to prep our files and load them onto our machine. And I'm kind of taking you through this demonstration today as if you are embroidering for the first time. So those of you that are experienced with embroidery, bear with us. We were all at that beginner stage at one point.
So first things first, you just slip your embroidery module on your machine. If it's a 7 or an 8 series, you're going to come at it like a little 45-degree angle and make sure that everything is nice and level and nice and flush. Then you can slide your expansion table in between the module and onto the machine like so. We're going to turn on the machine, and then you're going to plug in your USB stick, but only after you get your Kimberbell files loaded onto it. So when you load your Kimberbell design on your USB stick and you put it in your machine, you're not getting the default colors. So the first thing that we want to do is change it. Now, those of you that have a newer firmware version on your embroidery system than I do are going to want to pick whichever hoop you happen to have. So of course, if you have the medium clamp hoop, you're going to choose that, or you can choose your maxi or your jumbo hoop. So that's how you would switch the hoop. Now, of course, when you go ahead to embroider it, and then you put the hoop on, then the machine is also going to recognize what hoop you have on. So it's not totally necessary to change the hoop. But if you want to make sure that your design will fit in the hoop, I always do that first as a precaution. But we want to get these designs changed from our ugly colors here that come in with the Kimberbell system, and we want to change them to our pretty colors. So what I'm going to do is first go into my artist palette here. You can see that there are 17 colors in this design, and color number 1 and color number 2 do not really matter very much because they are just simply placement lines of some kind. We aren't going to worry about changing colors until we get to color number 3. So in order to change colors, this little bar, when we click the bar, will show us where that color is going to be in our little viewing field here on the right side. However, we can't change it until we press this little revolving recycle type button. Once you select that, you're going to have an option to pick the thread brand, and we're using Isacord. So I'm just going to scroll ahead until I get to isochord, and then I'm going to select the magnifying glass, which allows me to search. And our first color that we're changing, color number 3 to, is 5324. So I'm going to change 5324 and touch the bar down here, and then that color has been changed. Then it's really easy to scroll ahead to the next color. See our little thread button here? We're going to scroll down, and that takes us to color number 4. And we can see over here on our screen, color number 4 is 5440. And so I'm going to scroll ahead again to my isochord and select 5440 and touch the bar. And now here's another little tip. If you don't want to keep selecting your isochord color chart every time, because all of the threads we're using in this application are isochord, you can just touch this button here. And this button is changing from different brand to all the same brand. So I'm just going to touch this. And now when we scroll down to color number, whatever color we're on here, the color number 5, then I already am in that isochord chart. So now back to the magnifying glass to enter in color 5210. And there is that one. Now I'm going to scroll down again. I need to select 4430. Scroll down again for 2532. Scroll down again, 2560. And now you might think that this isn't really necessary to do this, and it's not. You could always go off this page that I gave you in the handout, but if you want to do multiple ones of these, or it's going to take you, a little while to do it, I always think it's best practice. Just go ahead and assign my colors before I get started so I know how to line my threads up on my handy dandy multiple spool rack. And what's really cool about this is I can keep my table clear and I can line up all my colors so I don't get confused through this project, because like I said, there are 17 different thread changes on this project. So I have continued through color number 8, and I'm just going to go back to my thread chart here. And color number 9 is 5440. And then color number 10 is 5115. Color number 11 is 4116. Color number 12 is 1600. Color number 13 is also 1600, and it's just there, so we don't really have to search for it. And then color number 14 is not in the system, I think. There's one of these that's not in my system, but let's go ahead and just look for 3150. Yeah, so just ignore this. I'm going for something that might just be in here. There we go. And then also color number 15 is 3150. We called it 3130. There we go. And then color number 16 is 1600 again. And color number 17 is 4430. Perfect. So now when we view our design by going to our edit crayon, now these are the colors that we're going to use for the project. Now let's go back to this page. I want you to print this out when you get this, because we want to be reminded that we're going to change to a contrasting bobbin color for colors 13 and colors 14. This is because this is what's going to create the fringe. And of course, we'll talk about this when we stitch this out, but I just want to point this out to you here. And before you stitch color number 15, you're going to change back to white bobbin fill. You only have 2 colors that you're going to put that contrasting thread in. Now, when you pick your design, it's going to pick the smallest hoop possible for the design, and you saw us change that earlier, but also we're going to need to change a few more things. And one of those things is the foot. So we need to use the embroidery foot number 26, and I'm going to tell my machine that. And then another one of those things is the needle plate. And here is my standard 9 millimeter wide needle plate. But for embroidery, the machines want you to switch to your single hole 0 millimeter or cut work plate. And you can see there that opening for the needle is that small little hole right there. So we're going to switch out that needle plate. And then we're also going to make sure we tell the machine that we're choosing that needle plate. And once you have picked your colors and everything, and you have chosen the hoop that you want to use, then it's time to go ahead and move it in the hoop. And you can do that by clicking that move icon and using your multifunction knobs, or you can use it by simply touching the design and moving it down to the bottom of the hoop. And in this case, we don't have to be very particular. So the fastest way to move this, further down on the hoop if you want to save fabric, or further up on the hoop or whatever, is to just use your finger and drag it down there, because we don't need to be particularly accurate with this project. And there we can leave that blank space for other stuff. Now, before we start stitching and doing some other stuff, some other back end applications that we want to make sure that we have. The first one is we want to turn thread away on. And thread away is a feature that allows the machine to kind of stop stitching and then pull the upper thread underneath so that there are no whiskers showing on top of the embroidery. So in my application here, you can see without thread away on, it just goes from one spot, cuts the thread, jumps over to the next spot, and stitches. And sometimes that can leave a whisker. So thread away, what happens is after it completes a piece, cuts the thread, goes to another section, it wiggles the hoop out of the way, thus pulling the thread down under the hoop. And another thing you want to change is your cutting feature. I like to make sure it will cut a small amount, like every 1 millimeter if I have a lot of little wispy things, and but set it up however you want. But whatever that tolerance is that you set is going to determine how long jump stitches are before they get cut. Once you have set up your machine, it's time to look at our kit. So we've got our fabric that we're going to use for the back and the shearing. We've got our zipper. We've got our white fabric we're going to embroider on, and our pillow form. And it's going to come to you a little squished down, but mine got a little hole in it, so it puffed up. Then we're going to either use the Kimberbell instructions or our BERNINA of Naperville instructions together in tandem to do your cutting and all of those things. But just so you know, I did deviate from these instructions just a little bit, but not in the cutting department. So our first thing is we're going to cut all of these bits out, and we're going to start by making sure we have enough of the white fabric, the stabilizer, and the interfacing to fit in our jumbo hoop. So let's look at the stabilizers that I want you to use. So one is a fusible backing, and this is just going to make your white fabric a little bit more opaque, and it gives it a little bit more rigidity and makes it more robust for when we do our embroidery. And the stabilizer that we're going to use is the cutaway mesh. So I went ahead and fused the fusible backing onto the white fabric. And now I'm going to take my mesh cutaway, spray that with a temporary adhesive spray like my 505 spray. Obviously, I did this off camera, so I didn't get everything sticky. But then we're going to cover that stabilizer with my fused white fabric and just make sure everything is nice and flat and pretty. And we're going to hoop it in the jumbo hoop. Now, of course, if you decide you want to use the medium clamp square hoop, or you're working on the smaller design, you're just going to pick the hoop that you have that will best accommodate, and you won't have to cut your fabric and your stabilizer quite as large. And don't forget on our ratchet hoops, we don't want to click them too many times. Like 2 little clicks should do the trick. So back at our machine, it's time to stitch this baby. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and say, let's start stitching. And the machine is prompting us to wiggle our hoop around. And you really have to pay attention to what the machine is asking you to do. And in this case, it just wants us to move that arm. Then it wants us to put the hoop on. And then once we get the hoop on, we're going to press the green button again to move it into position. And then it's time to stitch. So now let's have a little tour of our stitch out screen. We've got some different things here that we want to make note of. And one of them is our basting function. We don't need that because Kimberbell puts that in there. There's a move around at the last minute. There's a broken thread. There's turn your cutters on and off. There's thread sequencing and a bunch of stuff. And you can see there is our built-in stitch button. And I can advance through my colors. That's color number 2. And basically, we can just go through color by number based on those color changes we made. And the little information there to the left is telling us the amount the entire design takes to stitch out. And then the bottom one is each individual thread color. So I'm not going to stitch out color number 1. I'm just going to start by stitching color number 2. So I'm winding a bobbin of white bobbin fill to do my embroidery. And I'm going to wind it all the way full, but I'm also keeping on reserve just any contrasting thread that I might have laying around because there's going to be an opportunity for us to change to a different color thread so we can make that fringe that's on this design. Once I get the bobbin wound, or I'm going to line up all my threads on my multiple spool rack so that I know what color and what order I'm going to be stitching everything. This just makes it so much easier for me for when I get started. And I'm using a fresh needle. I'm actually using a number 75 embroidery needle. Embroidery needles are designed to coat the inside eye of the needle, and they're slightly ball pointed so that it will prevent fraying of the thread. Once my machine is all threaded up, when I'm doing this for this stitch number 2, which is just going to stitch this circle, I'm doing a thread up command. And that is simple as touching my external needle up down button to put my needle down, bring my needle up and the foot up so I can pull that bobbin thread up to the surface to stitch this circle. And I did this in a matching thread. And then I'm just going to go through all of the thread sequencing colors until I get to those threads where I have to change my bobbin. So color number 1 is complete, and then we just rethread and stitch color number 2, just like we did color number 1 and so forth. We just keep going through the stitch by numbers, making sure that you lined everything up nicely. If you don't have a multiple spool rack, you can certainly line it up on a table or in a basket or something like that. Now, every once in a while, there might be an accident or something happens or who knows what. And as you're in the middle of stitching, sometimes your thread may break. And if that happens, the machine has a sensor that will trip to tell you, hey, the thread has broken. Maybe it doesn't, when the moon aligns poorly or whatever. So you would stop the machine and you would advance either back or forward through the design to get where you left off. And then you're going to use your multi-function knob to go backwards through the design. And I like to overstitch just a little bit. So sometimes I'll just move my knob counterclockwise until maybe that presents with like 30 or something like that. That's actually, each stitch backwards that you're going. And then I also will pop my hoop off, make sure that the machine is rethreaded correctly. And then I also make sure that there's not any obstructions down in the bobbin because you never really know what causes something to go haywire until you go down there and you investigate. So I'm just going to slide the table off, open up my bobbin. Now this is an 880 plus that I'm using, so it's got that bobbin that automatically presents to the front like this. So I'm just going to pop the bobbin out And it's giving me a little resistance pulling it out. So I'm just going to gently use my tweezers to remove that thread. And then I see that there's other thread stuck there. So I'm turning my hand wheel so that I can, just really try to untangle that thread out of my hook. And then once I feel that that thread has been removed, I'm actually going to oil my hook down in that area so that it's going to be quiet and work nicely for me and all of those things. And then once that gets its little bit of oil, I'm going to temporarily close my bobbin door just so that the hook spins around for me a little bit. And then I'm going to open that door again. And then I'm going to put my bobbin in, thread it for embroidery, and continue about my embroidery until I get to color number 13, where I will change to that darker purple bobbin that you saw me use. And I'll stitch colors 13 and 14 with the contrasting bobbin. So the slide-on table goes back on, the hoop goes back on, and I'm going to just finish stitching the design. So while the machine is stitching out, you can go ahead and prep your back pieces for the envelope back of the pillow. And I'm using my Bernina L890 serger, and I've got it on a 4-thread overlock stitch with integrated safety stitch. And I'm just going to chain overlock the pieces here. And that's pretty easy. And then I'm going to cut them apart and take them over to my Laura Star Smart U system, where I'm going to use my hot hemmer to hem these up. Now I'm going to hem these up a little bit thick, about 3/4 of an inch is what I'm going to do. And this hot hemmer allows me to kind of place that wherever I want on the fabric, roll my fabric up, and then hit this with my steam iron to get a perfect crease and a perfect measurement on my work. And you can see that 3/4 inch seam there, and I'm going to do that on both sides. And this is going to allow me to do a lap zipper. And the reason why I want to do a lap zipper is because I have just a standard zipper that I've included in these kits, but I want to cover it. I don't want to really see the zipper teeth. And so this will allow us to make a really cool, nice lap zipper. Okay, so now that I've prepared my envelope piece and I have folded all my bits, it's now time to change our bobbin thread to our contrasting bobbin for colors 13 and 14. So colors 13 and 14 stitch a satin stitch that's quite long, and it enables us with that contrasting thread for when our project is done, we can turn this upside down and trim those threads so that we can pull out this stitching and get a nice fringe. But then when it's time to stitch color number 15, we're going to put our regular bobbin back in and just complete the entire embroidery design like we completed the first half of it. So while this finishes stitching up, we can start working on our ruffle. So back at our L890, I'm attaching our gathering foot. Now the gathering foot is crucial in creating this super cute ruffle. And so I'm going to slip this on the machine.
And this is foot number C18. For the Bernina L850 and L860, it's foot number L18.
Once you get the foot on, there are going to be some adjustments that you need to make to the tensions. And the tension adjustments are going to be yellow 5.1, green 5.1, and then the stitch length is going to be changed to 4.5. And I also have the differential feed set to 1. Now, there may be situations where you have to take the differential feed all the way down to 0.7, but in my case, I found that this worked out really well. In fact, it worked out so well that I didn't even have to make any adjustments at all. It was like the perfect length, but always do a test before you give this a try. Now, some of you may not have an L890 or a serger or a gathering foot to do these things with, but if you don't, you can always do the Kimberbell method. If you don't want to do the Kimberbell method, but you do want to use a gathering foot, I recommend the Bernina 16 wide if you have a sewing machine with 9mm hooks, and 16 narrow if you're using a 5.5mm type machine. So let's take a look at what we need to do to our machines for the number 16 foot. Well, it starts with adjusting the stitch length depending on how much gathering you want to do. On this foot, I sometimes think that, maybe like a 3mm to 4mm might be the sweet spot. And then you also can adjust how much gathering it does based on your tension adjustment. So the higher the tension, the more gathers. So longer stitch length, more gathers, and tighter tension, more gathers. So now that we have our little shirred border complete, we're going to trim the bobbin thread that's the contrasting bobbin thread. I also, thread away creates this hairy mess underneath there, so I like to trim my little threads away, but also trimming that bobbin thread away. So just, go in there and clean things up as much as you would like. But as I'm trimming this bobbin thread, I'm really freeing up our little floofs at the top. So you can see that we can create quite a sophisticated little floofy, fluffy flower like that. Once you've done all that trimming, we're going to trim right on top of that original circular stitching line, and there we have our piece. Now we're going to leave our stabilizer in there. That'll give it just more durability. But now I need to stitch my ruffle together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, right sides together. And, yes, you will be trimming off your little serger worms there. And then I'm going to fold my circle into quadrants and mark it with my blue water-soluble pen. And then I'm going to take my little tube that I made and I'm going to fold that into quadrants and mark that with my water-soluble pen right at my inner seam there, the inside smaller part of the circle. And then these will give us the registration marks that we need to pin this piece around the circle. And, one thing that you might know about me is I'm not an overpinner. So I literally just maybe used about 8 pins to hold this together. And then my long fingernails acted like a little piece to encourage this to lay flat. But whatever you need to do to get this nice and round and pretty. And remember not to sew over your pins. But you can see that it just, that gathering just naturally curves right around that piece. And you saw me kind of do a little test piece earlier, but this is obviously my real piece that I'm stitching here. So now, before I stitch, I'm going to remove that pin and just stitch around. And I'm stitching just a needle width to the left of our overlock stitch that did that gathering around this pillow piece. And I don't really back tack when I get to where I started. I just overstitch, use my thread cutter and cut, take this over to the iron, and we're going to press this into position so that we have a larger circle than the one that we started with. And we don't really have a circular template for this or anything, but the easy part of this is how we're going to create our lap zipper. So we're going to use a zipper foot number 14 with a guide on it. That guide is the real trick. And this is for use with machines that have dual feed. So I'm going to put this over on my machine, and I'm just going to stitch my first seam with my number 14D foot with the needle position moved. And of course, you can't do center needle position on a zipper foot. You have to move your needle position. And you're going to also want to remember to remove that needle plate that's the straight stitch and replace it with your 9mm needle plate, and then also tell your machine that you have the 14D foot on and that you have your 9mm needle plate on. So for the first pass, I'm going to move my needle all the way to the left, and then I'm going to place my zipper coil teeth up with my folded edge to the right of the coil. Then kind of the side, that left side of the zipper foot, is going to be the guide on the folded edge of the fabric. And we're just going to stitch down that seam. Notice that I haven't pinned. Everything lays so flat, I really don't need to in this application. I guess you could also think of it as that guide that you see there on the left is to the left of the coils. That might be a way to think of lining things up too. So now I'm going to use my cutter. I'm going to bring over my other side of this pillow back, and I'm going to put the folded edge covering that stitching line that we just created. And now that guide that's on my zipper foot, I moved it over so that it's as far away from the needle as possible there on the left. And that guide is going to go down the folded edge of this new piece that we're attaching. And just keeping that fold covering your previous stitching. And this creates a beautiful lap zipper. And then don't forget to unzip the zipper. And we're going to keep it unzipped, or else you're going to have a pillow that you really can't, you can't shove anything into. So there's our piece. There's our zipper unzipped, but we're kind of holding it together. And I like to keep the flap pointing down to the bottom of the pillow. So we're going to take our pillow and put everything right sides together like this. And then we're going to pin around this pillow and the backing of it. And we're not going to trim. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to use the side of our 1/4 inch presser foot along the raw edge of this circle that was created with the ruffle attached to the smaller circle to finish up our pillow. And you may need to kind of encourage that opening there where the zipper is kind of apart to kind of stick together a little bit better. Of using about 8 pins for this, but you know, whatever you do what you need to do to get this thing held together while you stitch it. The only thing that is a no-no is to sew over the pins. You're going to remove them right before you get to them. And just as a reminder, I've switched to the 1/4 inch foot, number 37D. And just like before, we're not going to back tack. Once we get to the end of the pillow, we're simply going to overstitch just a little bit. And it's amazing how round this will come out with this technique. I was like fascinated. I had like visions that I was going to give you all a template and we're going to do this, that, and the other. No, this came out great. And then just to make this nice and professional looking, I finished it off on the serger. And the serger has a blade, so I took off that gathering foot and I replaced it with the standard serging foot. And I just trimmed only the background of the pillow part with the blade of the serger, using, putting all of my settings back to just the standard 4-thread overlock stitch. And then I just went all the way around the pillow. And then once I serged around the pillow, I turned it inside out, pushed the seams out nicely, and put the pillow form inside, and this was done. And it was really satisfying learning all of these new techniques. And this is really something, if you start this, in the morning, you'll be done by supper or dinner. Or shall I dare say cocktail hour?
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. And you know what? I'm going to get out of here. I'm heading to dinner because I am in beautiful sunny Florida and I'm on vacation. So hope you had a fantastic holiday and can't wait to see you soon. And if you like this video and you want to see more just like it, don't forget to check out our Bernina of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy. It's youtube.com/Bernina of Naperville. And there you can like, comment, and subscribe. Happy embroidering.